let us transport ourselves back to the very moment the lie began. We stand on the jagged, wine-sheared peaks of Mount Ararat. It is the closing out of the unification wars. The air here is thin, cold, and reeks of a specific. Metallic scent the smell of ozone discharge from lightning claws, and the copper tang of gene-bulged blood. Below, the burning wreckage of the Ararat fortress sends plumes of black smoke into the stratosphere, choking the pale sun of ancient Terra. Look closely at the victors, standing amidst the corpses of the techno-barbarians or giants. These are not the polished, noble Astartes you know from the propaganda vids. These are the Legiones Cataegis, the Thunder Warriors. They are monstrous in their proportions. Their armor, the primitive Mark I Thunder pattern, is not enclosed. It leaves there massive, corded muscles exposed to the toxic elements, covered only by heavy ceramite plates and chainmail. They are breathing hard, their chests heaving like industrial bellows. Sweat mixed with grime runs down faces that are scarred, brutal, utterly exhausted. They have won. The last great enemy of the Emperor has fallen. The flag of the raptor, Imperium, is the lightning bolt, and the bird of prey snaps violently in the wind. In their minds, they're imagining the future. They see themselves marching to the stars. They see the rewards the Emperor promised: peace, purpose, and a place at his side. But watch their hands. Look closely. Some of them are shaking. Not from fear. These men do not know fear, but from biological failure. Their bodies are vibrating, their cells tearing themselves apart after the massive adrenaline dump of the final battle. They are dying, even as they stand. And then, the sky breaks open, not with rain, but with gold. The custodes arrive, the 10,000. The Emperor's companions. They do not come with medical transports. They do not come with water or supplies. They come with guardian spears leveled at chest height. They form a firing line, perfect and disciplined, in stark contrast to the ragged, bleeding giants before them. The silence that stretches between these two forces is heavier than gravity. A Thunder Warrior, perhaps a captain, steps forward, a confused smile breaking his scarred lips. He raises a hand in greeting, crack. The sound of a bolt around is deafening in the mountain air. The captain's head snaps back, a red mist spraying the snow. The smile is gone. The silence is shattered, and in that split second, before the roar of total war erupts, every surviving Thunder Warrior realizes the horrific truth. The war isn't over. The enemy has just changed faces, and the face of the enemy is their father. This moment, this singular, frozen second on Mount Ararat, is the cornerstone of the Imperium. It is the first great betrayal. It is the moment the Emperor decided that loyalty was a resource to be spent, not a virtue to be cherished. To understand why a father would murder his own sons, we must descend into the hell that birthed them. We must look at the nightmare of old night. Forget the sanitized history taught in the Schola Progenium. The Terra of the 30th millennium was not a holy world waiting to be saved. It was a slaughterhouse. For 5,000 years, the cradle of humanity had been isolated by warp storms, driven mad by isolation, and carved up by warlords who had forgotten the very definition of human. To the east, under the toxic smog of the Pan-Pacific Empire, the tyrant Northern Doom ruled with an army of half-mad zealots. Doom didn't just conquer. He sculpted. He twisted the genetics of his subjects, turning populations into livestock, creating abominations purely for his own amusement. To the north, the ethnarch of the Caucasus used dark, forbidden sciences from the dark age of technology to enslave the minds of millions. In the hives of Albia, steam-powered war machines crushed anyone who dared whisper of freedom. And in the shadowed fortress of Ush, the sorcerer kings drank the blood of psychers to fuel rituals that tore holes in reality itself. This was a world where diplomacy was a fatal disease. You could not negotiate with Caligan of Ush. You could not sign a peace treaty with the Cardinal Tang. These were not political leaders, they were monsters. They respected only one language: violence, absolute, overwhelming, catastrophic violence. The Emperor, emerging from the shadows of the Himalayas, understood the equation perfectly. He looked at the map of Terra, a patchwork of radioactive wastelands and fortress states, and he knew that a noble army would fail. A standard human soldier, no matter how well trained, would die screaming simply by looking at the horrors of the America hives. He needed something that could look into the abyss and spit in its eye. He needed a weapon that mirrored the savagery of the age. This is the uncomfortable truth that apologists for the Imperium often ignore. The Thunder Warriors were designed to be monsters because they were fighting monsters. They had to be immune to the radiation that coated 80% of the planet's surface. They had to be resistant to the psychic screams of the warp witches. They had to be strong enough to rip open the hull of a battle tank with their bare hands because supplies were scarce and ammunition often ran out. The Emperor created the Legiones Cataegis not out of malice, but out of desperate necessity. They were the final solution to the problem of Old Night. He took the toughest, most violent techno-barbarian tribesmen he could find, stripped them of their humanity, and pumped them full of alchemical rage. He forged them in the fires of Mount Everest and unleashed them like a pack of rabid wolves, and it worked. Oh, God Emperor, did it work? The Thunder Warriors didn't just defeat the warlords, they annihilated them. They erased entire cultures from history. They were the fire that burned the infection out of Terra's flesh. But here's the tragedy of the tool. A hammer is perfect for driving nails, but it is useless for building a house of cards. The Emperor knew that once the last warlord fell, the age of strife would end, and the age of the Imperium would begin. He needed to build a civilization of laws, of order, of iterators and remembrances. What place is there in a civilized world for a warrior who eats the flesh of his enemies? What do you do with a living weapon that knows only how to destroy? The Emperor looked at his wolves as they stood panting over the carcass of Terra, and he made the cold calculation: the wolves had done their job. Now, they were just dangerous animals. Dangerous animals are put down. To understand the betrayal, you must first understand the weapon itself. The Legiones Cataegis were not merely early space marines. They were a completely different breed of monster. If an Astartes is a finely crafted longsword balanced, durable, and elegant, then a Thunder Warrior was a jagged, rusted great axe. Heavy enough to cleave a tank into, but liable to shatter in your hands, physically. They were nightmares, standing taller and broader than even the Primaris Marines of the 41st millennium. Their bodies were slabs of hyperdense muscle and bone, reinforced with subdermal plating that made them walk like heavy servitors. They did not have the refined organ implants of the Astartes, no secondary heart, no multi-lung, no Sasan membrane to allow them to sleep. Instead, they were pumped full of a crude, aggressive cocktail of gene stimulants and alchemical steroids. Imagine the feeling of being a Thunder Warrior. You do not feel enhanced. You feel like you are burning alive. Your metabolism is running at 300% capacity, constantly. Your blood boils in your veins. Your heart hammers against your ribs like a trapped bird, beating so fast that rest is impossible. You are stronger than any man who has ever lived. Yes, you can punch through ferrocrete. You can tear the turret off a predator tank. But the price is constant, agonizing pain. This was the thunder in their name. It wasn't just poetic. It described the storm raging inside their own skulls. The Emperor, lacking the time to perfect the delicate gene seed organs, had used brute force genetics. He removed the limits on aggression. He removed the biological off switch. A Thunder Warrior was designed to be in a permanent state of fight or flight. Mostly fight. As the unification wars dragged on, the flaws in this hasty design began to manifest. It started with the flesh change. Tumors would erupt spontaneously. growing teeth and eyes in places they shouldn't be. Muscles would tear themselves from bones simply from the force of their own contraction. But the worst was the mental degradation. They called it the dream of the wolf. A thunder warrior would be standing guard, and suddenly, the line between friend and foe would blur. The face of a civilian would look like the face of a techno-barbarian. The sound of a child crying would sound like a bolt racking. They would suffer psychotic breaks so violent that entire squads had to be put down by their own brothers. The Emperor saw this. He saw his creations devolving into madmen, and here is the darkest realization. He knew this would happen when he wove their genetic strands in the labs beneath the Himalayas. He didn't include the safeguards for longevity because he never intended for them to live that long. He built them with an expiration date. Think of the cruelty of that design, to create a sentient being, capable of loyalty, brotherhood, and sacrifice, but denied the biology to exist in peace. They were built to burn twice as bright and half as long. They were the boosters of a rocket necessary to escape the gravity of old night. But dead weight once orbit was achieved, and the Emperor, the cold pragmatist, was already designing the capsule that would detach and continue the journey, the Astartes. The Thunder Warriors were not failed experiments. They were successful suicide weapons. They just didn't know it yet. And so we returned to Mount Ararat. The final battle against the Raju Chronicle had been won. The last of the techno-barbarian warlords lay dead. The Thunder Warriors, perhaps numbering in the tens of thousands, gathered on the slopes. They were battered. Their armor was cracked. Many were holding their intestines in with their hands, but they were proud. They had united Terra. The Emperor stood before them. Beside him stood the Legio Custodes, the 10,000, the Golden Legion. To the Thunder Warriors, these were their cousins, their superiors, the only other beings who could understand the burden of their existence. The order was given in silence, a single psychic command that rippled through the minds of the Custodes: liquidate. The first volley of bolter fire didn't just kill, it obliterated. The guardian spears of the Custodes are not like the mass-produced bolters of the Astartes. They are master-crafted weapons, relics of a forgotten age. They tore through the primitive ceramic plating of the Thunder Warriors as if it were paper. Chaos erupted. Imagine the confusion. Why? Why are they shooting at us? Is it a mistake? Is it a test? For the first few minutes, the Thunder Warriors didn't even fight back. They stood there, stunned, trying to shout orders, trying to hail their allies. They died in droves, cut down while begging for an explanation. It was only when they saw the Emperor turn his back, when they saw the father walk away as his sons were butchered, that the confusion turned to rage. And then, the true horror began. The Thunder Warriors, even in their broken, degraded state, were still the deadliest infantry force in human history. When they realized they were betrayed, they didn't flee. They charged. The battle that followed was not a skirmish. It was a cataclysm. A Thunder Warrior, fueled by the adrenaline of betrayal, is a force of nature. Lore fragments suggest that for every Thunder Warrior that fell, they took a toll in gold and blood. They smashed the Custodes with their bare fists. They used their own broken bones as ships. They fought with the desperation of children who realize their parent is trying to drown them. It is said that Constantin Valdor, the Captain General of the Custodes, the greatest warrior of the Imperium save for the Emperor himself, had to personally lead the charge to break their lines. Even he, with all his skill, found himself pushed back by the sheer, unadulterated fury of the Cataegis. But they were doomed, not by lack of strength, but by lack of unity. They were a mob of berserkers fighting a disciplined legion. The Custodes isolated them, trapped them in kill boxes, and executed them methodically. It took hours. The snow of Ararat turned into a slurry of red slush. By nightfall, the screams had stopped. The official Imperial records state that the Thunder Warriors perished to a man fighting the enemies of mankind. The Emperor built a memorial on that mountain. He laid a wreath. He gave a speech praising their sacrifice. It was the perfect lie, a lie so audacious, so complete, that for 10,000 years the galaxy believed it. The Emperor used their deaths to fuel his propaganda machine. He turned his victims into martyrs. He built his throne on a foundation of their bones. Then he washed the blood from his hands and began the Great Crusade. Stop. Take a breath. This is the reality of the Imperium. It is not a shiny, heroic saga. It is a story written in the blood of the innocent and the loyal. If you want to uncover more of these forbidden true stories that the Inquisition would burn us for telling, hit that subscribe button. Join us in the deep lore. Now, let's talk about the ones who didn't die. Because on Ararat, the Emperor made a mistake. He missed one. History is often written as if the massacre at Mount Ararat was total clean sweep that erased the mistake of the Thunder Warriors forever. But the Emperor, in his hubris, made a critical error. He assumed that a creature bred for nothing at war would simply lay down and die when the fighting was done. He underestimated the will to survive. From the smoking ruins of Ararat, a shadow emerged, not a ghost, but a broken god. Terranis, known as the Lightning Bearer, the primarch of the Thunder Warriors in all but title, dragged his shattered body into the darkness. He did not flee to the stars. He burrowed deep into the bowels of the very world he had conquered, down into the lawless slums of the Petrine district, where the light of the Imperial Palace was just a distant myth. To understand the horror of Tyrannus's existence, you have to look past the glory of his past. Imagine a being who once stood at the right hand of the Emperor, now forced to rule over a kingdom of criminals, mutants, and organ harvesters. He became a crime lord not out of greed, but out of biological necessity. His body, once the pinnacle of genetic engineering, was turning against him. The thunder in his blood had become a cancer. His organs were failing, his cells necrotizing at an accelerated rate. Every breath was a battle against his own design. Terranis turned the Underhive into a laboratory of desperation. He didn't build weapons. He built life support systems. He dissected the dead, stole genetic material, and committed unspeakable acts of surgery upon himself and his few remaining lieutenants. Like the brute Gotha, he became a vampire of science, hunting for the one thing the Emperor had denied him: stability. There is a profound tragedy in seeing the Lightning Bearer reduced to this. He was the prototype for the greatest heroes of humanity, yet he was forced to skulk in the sewers like a rat. But here is the twist that makes his story truly grimdark. Terranis did not hate the Emperor. He didn't plot rebellion. In his twisted, gene-coded loyalty, he still believed in the dream of unity. He simply refused to accept that he wasn't part of it. He looked up at the new angels, the Astartes soaring in the skies above, and he didn't feel anger. He felt pity. He saw them as pale imitations, mass-produced copies of his own magnificence. But he also envied them. He envied their stable gene seed, their ability to live for centuries without rotting from the inside out. So he did the unthinkable. He began to hunt them. He captured Astartes, not to kill them, but to harvest their progenoid glands to steal the fix that the Emperor had put in the new models but left out of the old. This is the Lightning Bearer's curse, to be the superior warrior, the original conqueror, yet forced to cannibalize your inferior successors just to buy another day of agonizing life. It is a mirror of the Imperium itself feeding on its own children to delay the inevitable collapse. This leads us to the inevitable comparison, the question that haunts every deep dive into this lore. Why? Why did the Emperor replace the Thunder Warriors with the Space Marines? If the Cataegis was stronger, faster, and more resistant to the warp, why downgrade? The answer is chilling in its pragmatism. The Emperor didn't trade strength for weakness. He traded power for control. Imagine a Thunder Warrior as a hurricane. It is destructive, terrifying, and unstoppable. You unleash it on a city, and the city ceases to exist. But you cannot tell a hurricane to capture a strategic point and hold it. You cannot tell a hurricane to minimize civilian casualties. You cannot tell a hurricane to stop destroying when the war is won. The Thunder Warriors were individualistic warlords, prone to fits of berserk rage and independent thought. They followed the Emperor because he was the strongest alpha in the pack, not because they were programmed to obey. Now, look at the Astartes. The Space Marines are not forces of nature. They are biological machines. Through the hypnotic indoctrination of the implantation process, an Astartes is stripped of the chaotic individuality that defined the Thunder Warriors. The "and they shall know no fear" protocol isn't just a motto. It is a neurological rewiring. It removes the hesitation of self-preservation. But more importantly, it removes the capacity for disobedience. The Astartes are the leash dogs of the Imperium. They are bred to hunt, yes, but they are also bred to sit, stay, and heal at their master's command. The Emperor realized that a galaxy-spanning crusade required logistics, not just slaughter. He needed soldiers who could act as diplomats, who could integrate with the Imperial army, and who could be mass-produced with a standardized template. The Thunder Warriors were artisanal monsters, each one unique, each one an unstable masterpiece. The Astartes are industrial products, reliable, replaceable, and uniform. The gene seed of the Astartes is designed to be harvested and implanted in new recruits, ensuring an endless supply of soldiers. The Thunder Warriors died with their hosts, but the most cruel difference lies in the leash itself. The Astartes are biologically dependent on the Imperium. They cannot reproduce. They rely on the tech priests for their armor, on the apothecaries for their medical care, and on the chapter for their purpose. A Thunder Warrior could survive alone in the wasteland. An Astartes is a component of a larger machine. So, when the Emperor ordered the culling at Ararat, he wasn't just clearing the board of old tech. He was making a statement about the future of humanity. He decided that the age of heroes of wild, uncontrollable individuals was over. The age of the soldier, the obedient, standardized, leashed killer had begun. He chose the weaker warrior because he knew the weaker warrior would never turn the gun on him, or so he thought. So we return, one last time, to the silence of Mount Ararat. The wind still howls across the peaks, but the bodies of the Thunder Warriors are long gone, ground into the dust of history or buried beneath the foundations of the Imperial Palace. The storms of old night have cleared, replaced by the suffocating smog of the Ecumenopolis. The Emperor sits on the golden throne, a rotting corpse sustained by the sacrifice of 1,000 souls a day. But if you listen closely to the whispers in the dark corners of the Imperial Palace, you can still hear the echo of that first betrayal. The legacy of the Thunder Warriors is not found in statues or hymns. It is found in the terrifying precedent it set. The massacre at Ararat proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that for the master of mankind, nothing is sacred if it stands in the way of survival. Not honor, not loyalty, not even the lives of those who bled to build his dream. The Thunder Warriors believed they were the heroes of the story. They believed they were the sons of the Emperor. They were wrong. They were tools. And when a tool is broken, or when a better tool is invented, the old one is discarded. And this brings us to the most chilling realization of all afoot that keeps chapter masters of the Adeptus Astartes awake in the dead of night. The cycle is repeating. Look at the galaxy today. The Indomitus Crusade has launched. A new breed of warrior has appeared, the Primaris Space Marines. They are taller, stronger, and more genetically stable than their firstborn brothers. They were created in secret by Belisarius' call, on the orders of a Primarch, to save an Imperium that the old Astartes could no longer protect. Does that sound familiar? The firstborn Marines, the heroes of 10,000 years of war, the veterans of Armageddon and Baal are looking at these new, superior brothers with a suspicion that gnaws at their souls. They see the writing on the wall. They remember the forbidden rumors of Ararat. They know that in the eyes of the Emperor, obsolescence is a capital crime. Are the Space Marines of today the Thunder Warriors of tomorrow? Will there come a day, perhaps soon, when the Custodes receive a new order, a new purge? Will the old Astartes be asked to march into a battle they cannot win, only to be gunned down from behind by the new Primers? All in the name of efficiency. The history of the Imperium suggests the answer is a terrifying yes. The Emperor does not share power. He only tolerates tools until they break. The betrayal of the Thunder Warriors teaches us the final, most important lesson of Warhammer for OK. In the grim darkness of the far future, there are no good guys. There are only those who hold the gun, and those who face the wall. The Thunder Warriors were the first to face the wall, executed by the very dream they helped build. And as the galaxy burns round us, one has to wonder, who is next? The Emperor protects, but only as long as you're useful.